I'm Spentopia Rose, but you can call me Span. It's raining today, and I thought a nice thing to do while it's raining is to sit near a window, as I am, and watch the rain come down and just draw. And I thought some drawings that we could do together, that you could do with me, that you could do some drawing with me. Would you like to? Would you like that? Would you like that? Would you like to do some drawing with me? I'd really like it if you would do some drawing with me. Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, I can help you, yeah. I was thinking that we could do a page of roses. A page of roses, a whole page of very simple roses. Would you like to draw some roses with me? Yeah? Yeah, you'd like that? Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is light my candle. So you can hear the sound. Alright, I'll just pop that down here next to you. Shall we? So the book that I'm going to be doing the drawing in, that I thought we could draw in, that we could draw in my sketchbook. Now this sketchbook that I'm currently doing is, I can't remember the brand, but they're very, very good. They're this cardboard cover, and they've got this elastic which I'll settle nice and tight. I drew this girl hanging upside down from this bar, and then the bar is where the elastic goes. So just skip through some pages. That's the prototype. I like this page. It's a cute girl with lots of butterflies. A cute girl with lots of butterflies. Maybe we could draw some butterflies. Here is a nice sunflower. But I thought we could do some roses. Not like this, not like that. So I thought we could do this page here. This is a drawing I did earlier today. A little just starter to freshen up. But on this page, I thought that we could do a page of those really simple roses that you do with a brush pen. Now you can do these with a paintbrush if you don't have a brush pen, but I am using a Copic marker, a Copic gas and Freud. Where's the word? Copic. Is that upside down? Try this way. So I'm gonna try that. Because this is how I know what works. So we'll just rearrange it. We'll just move that. I'll just move you. Would you like to move? Would you like to move so that you can see? We'll move you so you can see. All right. Would you mind? You don't mind? Okay. Hold still. All right. So what I thought we could do. So here's what we do, right? So what you can do is you can get a pencil. And lightly sketch out some circles if you want to. usually don't do this, but it's a good guide as a first step of what to do. So I'll take this first circle. Which circle are we using? This circle. Take this first circle and right in the center of the circle, in the center of the circle, in the center, in the center, in the center of the circle, I'll just do a tiny little mark. Very soft. Sort of like a crescent moon shape. And then on the opposite side, I'll do another one. Very soft and gentle. Alright, so then you've got this little, can you see that? Like, cleft hoof pattern. Just two marks next to each other. Then you get the brush pen and you go really gentle on one side. And then press slightly heavier as you come to the side that is adjacent from the gap. So you're doing it the opposite way. And then you want to do this, it looks a little bit like a smiley face at the moment. But what you want to do is you want to get the same thing happening on top. So you go very lightly to start with. And then press slightly harder. And then go down. So you don't make them join up, you leave a gap, and that's the center of the rose. So now we're going to do the bigger petals, which is the same thing. So you start at the gap, you start right here at the gap, right here at the gap. And you want the fattest part of the petal to be adjacent to the gap. So you've got a gap here and a fat petal, and a gap here and a fat petal. So this gap here needs a fat petal, so you start very lightly at the furthest point, very lightly. And then you press slightly harder so that the mark gets fatter. And then you go very lightly again towards the edges, towards where the gap should be, in the middle. See that? So now you do that same thing on the other side, right? You just get very light touch, and then you press down a bit, little bit deeper, very lightly, come back down, take the pressure off to the other side. See? And then you continue that pattern all the way out to the edges of the circle that you've already drawn. So you start at the fat bit, very thin, very soft, and then gradually add a little bit of pressure, and then gradually come back down, so there's less. And then you do the same thing for the other side. Go thin, line, fat line, thin. And you just follow the curve of the rose that's already there, of the one before it. So you just follow that circle. So this is the curve we're going to be doing next, and that curve is going to be fattest here and skinniest here. So very light, barely any pressure, very light. And then a little bit more pressure, little bit. And then gradually taper that back, right down, taper right back down to the center. Alright, we'll do another one. We haven't finished yet, we haven't got to the edge of the circle. So what you do is you go very thin, very light lines, very light, and then a little bit heavier. You take your time. It doesn't matter if you get wobbly. It adds to the realisticness. Taper it off, right back, and leave a tiny gap. And if the gap's too big, if the gap feels way too large, right? If that gap is feeling too large, you can just put a tiny dot. Just a tiny dot, which is barely noticeable, but it does. The devil's in the details, you know. So you go from the fat bit really thin, and then you gradually, a little bit harder, right to the edge of that circle, and then you taper back down, and it doesn't matter if the curve is not perfect. Like I've got a lump here, but it adds to the feeling of the rose. It adds to it. So, and then you do this one on this side to match up. You go all the way along, getting slowly, larger, fatter. Then you taper it off, skinny. There you go. And that's basically at the circle. So I would stop there now, and I would move on to another circle. So the other circle we have is up here. You can hardly see it. It's very soft, very bright, but we'll do it too, right? We'll do it too. So you pressure to get to that, and then back down to the thin. And it doesn't matter if it's a little bit wonky, if it's a little bit off, that's fine. It won't matter. So then you do the same thing, try and do thinner, 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 very slight pressure for the center, and then thinner back out, coming back to the edge there. And this side is much fatter than that side. You want it to be more even. If you can get it evener, that's better. If you can get it to be even, that's great. But that doesn't always happen. So you start at the very it's great to do them in one line movements. So now I've lifted my pen, I'm gonna have to put it back in exactly the same spot. So exactly the same spot. Very gently. Add a little bit more pressure because we're getting into that gap center there. And then apply it back down again. Alright. And then you do the top. You do the opposite side after that. So it's always one at a time. Very slowly. Tapering. Bigger and bigger. And then, whoops. Slower and slower. Now this one's a bit messier. I think it's the angle I have to press down the paper. But that's okay. It's not going to make any difference in the scheme of things. Okay. So then you start at the soft spot and you get fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. And then down, taper it down. And then very light, very soft, a bit more pressure, a little bit. And then taper it back down. And then you just keep doing this. You do this tapering to the larger, and then tapering to the softer. The tapering from the softer to the big, thicker ones, and then back down again. And it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, obviously. Down. And it does. I find it looks better if you work slower. That one I did a little too fast, and it doesn't look quite right. It also doesn't reach all the way around, but that's okay. So this next one's quite large, right? It's going to be quite a large petal. It's going to go all the way around here. So press it very lightly, slowly make it bigger, and then flatten it right out. And then, if you lift your pen, put it back where it was, and then right back down, right? And I'm going to call that done. Do you think? Or do you think it needs one more? I think it needs one more set. So this set, I'm going to do more as a petal than, more as a leaf than a petal. Do it more as a leaf than a petal. So I'm going to do one fat one here, more triangular, and the same on this side. So you go very gently, not all the way. So you come a couple of, like about halfway in to about here, and then you go taper. And then you press quite hard to make it quite big, and then you come down again like that. Right? And then you do the same on this side. So start about halfway, press rather hard to get to there, and then down, taper it down. And I'll make this guy a little bit bigger on this side, this leaf. Yeah. So there, that's two, right? And then what you would do is just go ahead and fill the whole page, and you don't have to work with the circles that you've got. You don't have to. You absolutely can just start wherever you want. So say you want to do one about here, you just do one like that. You just go like that, and then you do the other side. And then you go a little bit fatter at the edges. A little bit fatter at the edges. And it doesn't matter if it's wobbly, because in nature petals often aren't perfect. Everybody thinks that they are. Thinks that nature has this perfection to it, but actually it's full of imperfections and wobbly lines and things that are almost but not quite perfectly symmetrical, but just things that are good enough, And often if you've got this and your lines are too clean, if your lines aren't wobbly, then often it looks a little bit fake. It looks like a plastic rose instead of a real rose. So you just keep doing that. We'll do on a slight bit of an angle like that. Slight bit of an angle. Feel free to show me your progress when you do this. You can do this with a paintbrush as well. It doesn't have to be ink. It doesn't have to be a fancy marker. It can be watercolors. Anything that allows you to get pressure. You can't really do this with a ballpoint pen. It works differently. It works very differently. I can show you if you like. Yeah, you'd like that? Would you like that? Okay, I'll show you. I'll finish this one with a couple of dots just to make it look nice, right? So if you're doing this with a normal pen, right? Say you've just got a ballpoint pen. Here's a red pen. So I'll work to the confines of a circle. So there's a circle here, right? So what you would do is it's nice and rainy. You would draw that shape, that crescent moon shape, a bit wobbly, and then color it in. Right? Draw that crescent moon shape, color it in, but you don't want it to be too thin line. You want it to be a little bit wobbly, a little bit chunky, right? And again, you start with a thinner line at the other side, and you do that. I do the outside first. It comes up like that, and it's basically just a series of crescent moons that taper down and are fatter in the middle, and then you color it in. It is harder to color in. You gotta stay in the lines, right? I find that this doesn't look as let's call it sleek. Color it in. And I like to do the outlines first, which is very different to how you would do it. With the brush pen, you do that whole segment all at once with the brush pen. But when you're using a normal ballpoint pen, I did the first line first that time. You gotta know where you're going, sort of. And then I like to color in with tiny scribbles, circles, not in lines, because the lines sort of take away from that natural feel, right? I'll show you. I'll do this petal in lines. So if you color in just lines, actually that has quite a nice feel to it. Let's do some more. That was a lot better than I expected. And that's a big part of creativity and making art, is to just, sorry about that, is to just experiment and try things out that you don't think will work. Because sometimes a juxtaposition is one of the best things you can do in art, right? It's really good to get contrast. So if you can make these, I'll make this one a little bit, I'll make this one, this petal, I'll make this petal a little bit darker, but still colored in the lines. And I'm not sure you can see that. Can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see what's happening? Why is this so difficult? Okay. See the lines? Yeah. I find the line work a little bit harder. So I'll just finish that off with another petal here. I do find that I can be a bit quicker with the pen work though. But I do find that for me, I don't think it looks quite as nice. But it's a great thing that you can practice, a great doodle, just to keep drawing, to keep yourself drawing. So we'll do one more. Yeah, do another one. Would you like to see a different medium? I can do it in pencil. I'll do it in pencil. This is a pacer, a stationary pacer. So I'll do one here. I'll ignore that circle. I don't like that circle. Now this is a very rough sketch, this one, because otherwise it would just be the same thing as the pen, but in a different colour. So I'm trying to do it a bit rougher, a bit more scribbly. And you just keep repeating that same pattern out. And obviously you can make it fit into the shape that you like, if you wanted. I find the scribbles seem to be harder to see what's actually going on. as well to get the red, like the red rose happening. And of course there's also watercolours. But when I do things in watercolours, it's exactly the same as using a brush pen, because I can't open this. There we go. It's getting windy. Because it's the same. I use one of these water brush pens, right? So I will do the same actions with a brush pen as I would with a water brush pen. And I'll show you that now. Would you like a red rose, a red rose, a red rose? Let's go yellow. I like yellow. So you just squeeze a little bit of water onto the brush pen, put it into the yellow until you get that nice. Can you see that? That nice. I'm not sure if you can see that nice bright yellow. Right. And then so we'll do a big yellow rose just here. We'll do a big one, shall we? So it's very simple. You just do exactly the same thing. No pressure. Little bit of pressure, a little bit of pressure. Just those crescent moons for the start. Right? That's a bit backwards, but basically two shapes, two blobs, and then you pick up more colour and you do the same pressure on the middle, tapering down to the edge, tapering into the fat, and then tapering out of it again. And you just keep that pattern up. And you want to load your brush with You want to load your brush with quite a bit of paper. Paint. You want to load it right up so it's nice and vibrant. And it doesn't really matter if it's out of shape. Like I said before, if there's an extra dot or something, you just add a little bit more water and pick up more paint. You just work with it, it's natural. It's supposed to look like that. So then you go from real thin up to real thick in the middle, and then real thin again. Again, it's better if you don't lift your brush nib off the page. It looks better if you just do it with one continuous line. But sometimes that doesn't always work out, Sometimes you gotta lift your pen, and it's just a matter of getting it back into that position. The problem with using watercolors, the problem with watercolors that I find is that you have to wait for them to dry. You have to wait for the watercolors to dry. But that's fine. I like to do that. So you make nice fat brush ends. And the larger that you need your middle to be, the harder you press. So for this last one, right, you press all the way, quite hard, and all the way down. So it uses the full extent of the brush up this end. I'm just going to pick up a little bit more paint, and put it onto the paper. Pick up a little bit more pigment in the paint and just pop that over the top of the brushwork I've already got, just to really make that colour stand out. Sometimes I don't like to do that. I like that washed out tone, but sometimes not so much. There we go. I think we're done. That was fun. I really enjoyed that. So what you have to remember to do always is to get a piece of paper or something and clean your brush pen. You've got to clean the yellow right out of it. And you do that by squeezing the water out and then brushing it on the clean paper to try and get any of that pigment, that paint, out of that brush. And then later, often, I will also go and empty this water. I'll empty this water, refill it, and clean this just in case in the sucking and dripping action. Just in case some of that water has gotten sucked back into the container. Because at that point, the water starts to go yellow and you pretty much need to replace your brush. So you want to clean that. Close up that container, pop it away. roses that we have done in the last, just as we hang out together, we did 1, 2, 3, 4 ink, 1 pencil, 1 biro, and 1 watercolor. And I might continue to draw these on this page. I'll just use the rest of my pen. Which type do you like better? Do you like the pencil? Do you like the biro? Do you like the watercolor? Or do you like the ink? Personally, I like the ink. I think it's just got something more real about it. Out of these, which is your favorite? Which is your favorite out of these? Mine is this one, I think, because it's so round. It just really looks nice. But I'll just do some more now. The pencil made the best sound. The pen looks the most sketchy. The watercolor is the brightest, but these ones have something about them in their details that I quite like. And what you can also do is you can layer them behind each other, right? So I'll start one here, like this. 2 little marks, right? 2 marks on the paper with a split in between them. And then you just do what you always do, right? Make the little petals around the edges. Slowly getting bigger and bigger as you go around. The longer your petal is, the fatter you're going to want it to be. So this one isn't really taking shape on that side. It's kind of a little bit too long. So then, right, you end up with this guy in the way. So you just, he's not quite in the way yet, right? Just get around to the other one. Next petal, right, goes up like that, down. And this petal goes up like that, and then tapers all the way down. So that needs to go all the way into the black there. So then this guy needs to be fatter, obviously. Look at that. I neglected that. Oh gosh, and then come down to the dots there. And then a bit fatter on this side, right? So then what you want to do is, to get it to look like he's up behind that, you have to start thin, right? Taper it, bigger and bigger and bigger, and stop. Just make sure that comes all the way up to, but not over the top of. And then imagine it's getting fatter and fatter and fatter, and it starts timbering down, and then you pick it up where it is. So imagine it's still a little bit fat, but it's getting lighter, right? It's getting smaller. That didn't work very well, so we'll just go over it like that. And taper it down, right? So it looks like it's going wide. So this one is definitely on top of that one, right? Like that. Sometimes you can do this where you layer it over each other a little bit. That works too. So then you imagine it starts in the middle, right? You just imagine where it is, but you don't start pressing down until you get where it was. So you get fatter over here, right? And then it goes down and tapers off. Imagine it's about there, and it's starting to get fatter, and it gets quite fat, right? And then it tapers off, but it doesn't go all the way to small, because this one's over the top. Very much clearly over the top. So now you've got this layered effect where these roses are above that rose. These 2 roses are above that rose, right? And then we'll throw this rose into the mix. Let's try. This could be tricky, right? So you do one there, and then one here, right? And then you make them bigger and smaller, bigger and smaller, bigger and smaller. And you just got to try and keep that tiny gap of distance between each petal. It really makes it look real and nice, otherwise it'll just blurs in together. Alright, make that a little bit fatter, come right up to there. Alright, and then, so imagine where it is, and then don't stop pressing until it's out of there, right? So it starts there, so it'll be quite thin still, it gets quite fat, and it goes quite thin all the way out. Underneath. So then we'll do this side. Right? You get quite fat, and you keep it fat all the way up to that rose, right? So that rose will stay fat, and then it'll start to taper down, and then it'll just be just like a little bit left there. Right? Just a little bit like that. A little bit left. start to get this build-up of roses happening. And you could fill a whole page this way if you wanted. You could really get in there and fill a whole page. I'll do one or two more here. So what you can do as well is add in some leaves, right? Not this kind of leaf, not this boring kind of leaf. You can add in leaves that look a little bit different, right? So a rose leaf, if you look at it, a rose leaf has a shape that comes out. It's got a line that comes out the middle. Then it's got jaggedy edges, right? So it's not straight. It comes out a little bit like that. And it's just in a very thin lines that you do that, right? You do want people to be able to see it though. It's got to stand out a little. But it's in a much thinner line. And you don't have to have the jagged edges. You can have it smooth and curved like that. And you really look at that quality of line when you're doing smooth lines like that. I find it much harder, but you can do it like that. And what you can do is add that into places that will be hard to get a rose. So if you put a little thin leaf there, right, and a little edge there, the leaf, just put some of those in. Make them look this a little bit different for each one. That was too dark, and now it looks strange. So I'm going to cover this one dark as well. And it's going to go over the top of that one. Right, that was bad. So now, because that looks terrible, I'm going to put in a rose. I'm going to put a rose in here, like this. Because I know that I can do the roses and make them look alright, right? Even when you mess up with a rose, it tends to look okay. Right? It's not make or break with a rose, but with a leaf, I really don't like the look of that. It would have looked better if I'd just left it as a gap, right? Do you agree? Do you agree? Do you agree? This one, I'm getting too fast because I made a mistake over there. Now I'm getting anxious about what everything looks like. So all the way up to there, and then make this a big leaf here, right? So what I think would have looked better was if I'd have left that white. But that's how you do that, right? So we'll just do one last rose. We'll do one last rose here in this circle that we created earlier. Right? Last one. Last one. And it's quite close. It's quite close to the other rose. Whoops, I made that a bit too. So I'm going to taper it down. I'm just going to test what that looks like. Right? And I'm going to taper it up. Taper it up like that. And then back down again. Sometimes I like to fill in the gaps that I like. This one wobbled in. I like to make this wobble down. I like this one to wobble up so that the wobbles match each other. Alright, so the last few leaves, petals, the last few petals for this one, going in now. You make it quite large, and keep it quite large, but tapering down, like that. Right, I'll just do one more because I feel like it needs it, like that. Alright, how does that look? It's starting to fill the page with roses. It's starting to fill the page completely with roses. Do you think I should keep going? I'll do one more. Last one, I promise, last one. This time is the last one, it's the last one, it's the last one, it's the last one. So it just looks like it needs to be there. This one, I should have stayed. I should have stopped when I wanted to. Instead of doing this last one, it's like, it looks forced, don't you think? It looks forced. But we'll keep going until it hits the other roses. big one, you taper it down, right? So then that would go around, and then that would probably have a bit there, like that, right? And then that would get bigger here, so that would be full there underneath, and then that's all. So then you start here quite big still, go down, taper down into it. Somewhat like that. Alright, that looks a bit funny, but we'll just bring that out there. And we'll put one more little to taper it down. There we go. How's that? Now we have a whole bunch of roses. We have a whole bunch. We have almost, the page is full of roses. It's just not completely scattered. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've got 9 roses that are blank. Ink. We've got 1 in pencil, 1 in red pen, and 1 in yellow watercolors. Now, unfortunately, I didn't rub out this circle or this circle before I did the watercolors, so there's always going to be these little lines. But what you can do to get rid of the lines that you can see behind the ink, you can just rub them out. And the ink will hold fast. The ink will hold fast. Don't rub out the pencil, obviously. It will just rub out. But it won't rub out from on top of the watercolor. So you just got to be mindful of what your sketch looks like when you're watercoloring. Another thing that happens that you can do, is get your watercolors again. And just, we'll do it with yellow again. We'll just pick up that yellow. Pick that yellow back up. Use this one, pick it up just a little still. And what you can do then is that you can actually colour these roses after the fact. So we'll do this one up in the corner. You can make him nice and yellow. And see how that contrast really brings an element. But you only do the gaps, right? You only fill in the gaps with the colour. And it doesn't matter if you go over the top of the ink, this ink won't bleed. But you do have to watch your pens. Some pens will bleed and some won't. Some will bleed and some won't. What you can do then to make it look even more authentic is pick up some green and then you just pop that into the leaves. And that really makes it pop with colour. Really makes it pop with colour if you do that. And I'm just going to put in these leaves that I put in here that I didn't really like. I'm just going to colour it green. Just going to colour it green so you can see what it is. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. And you could do those, one in every different colour, right? You could have different coloured roses. So if you wipe off the colour green, and then you pick up a red, say we'll pick up an orange first. And we'll do this one orange. Just real quick, just in the caps. Just watercolour it over. And then we'll pick up a lighter red, and we'll do the one next to it red. Pick that colour back up and just pop it right in so it's a nice fire engine bright red and you don't go outside the lines. Right? And then you will pick up this next red here as well. A bit of a darker red and we'll put it next to it as well. Oh, it's more pink, isn't it? That's alright. That's alright. And we'll get that pink and we'll just colour in the pink, right? Colour in the roses. What other colours should we do? What other colours? Blue, let's do it. Let's do a light blue rose. Because this is our world and we can make roses whatever colours we like. Whatever you choose, you can do. I do need to add a little bit more pink here see I missed a bit. I missed this line, this gap here, because this looks fat, right, as it comes out to there, so that's obviously need to be in here because it's not part of the green. And you just gotta be real careful about bleed through. Real careful. Alright, there we go. We need 3 more colours. Let's do a dark blue and a purple to start with. We'll do a dark blue one now. Dark blue rose. Nice and dark. You just gotta be careful not to go outside of that circle that you've drawn, that rose. Now we'll do a purple, which really feels like a dark blue. And even darker blue, a darker blue, a darker blue circle. We'll do it here. And look, it comes up purple on the paper. That's so interesting. Alright, and I'll just do this one last rose. This one I'll do this last rose. In another yellow, we'll do it in a brighter yellow. So for that I really need to clean my brush because purple will make the yellow purple. Like it will overpower the light yellow. So now I've got a clean brush. I'm going to come back and I'm going to pick up this really light lemon yellow, this fluorescent almost yellow. Pick up a nice lot of it on my brush. This rose here, with a nice yellow. And you don't want to do 2 roses next to each other straight away because the colours will bleed into each other. It'll bleed into each other, and just because there's a lot of yellow built up on that black, I'm just going to tap it off. Just going to tap it, tap, 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 tap. And there we go, a bunch of roses, of multicoloured roses. Sometimes I think this looks just as pretty as the artwork itself. Anyway, that's how you draw roses. I feel like we need to fill this leaf with a different colour green, so I'll just real quick fill that in with a different green. That's probably more of a rose-like green, in my opinion. Alright, and the contrast of the 2 different colour greens next to each other on the same rose really makes it pop. It makes it pop, don't you think? Alright, and there we have it, a page full of roses. Thank you for joining me. That was a lot of fun. Alright, I'll see you next time.